This conversation explores historical records, research, and personal perspectives on UFO disclosure, theology, and government secrecy. It's presented for educational and investigative discussions. Viewers are encouraged to examine the evidence and draw their own conclusions.
But when you get up into these upper echelons of the conversation, the questions aren't, are they real? Are UFOs real? Those questions are already answered at that level. It appears that the famous Eisenhower Treaty, which is sometimes called the Greada Treaty, is real, that it did happen, and that we've struck a Faustian bargain behind the scene, specifically with the gray alien faction, that is criminal because we have allowed citizens of our nation to be abducted against their will.
Hello, amazing people. Welcome to the Ryan Files. This is the first episode of year 3, and we're not easing into it. We're going straight to the heart of the mystery. My guest tonight is Timothy Alberino, explorer, researcher, and author who exposes the connection between ancient history, biblical prophecy, and the modern UFO and alien disclosure movement. What you're about to hear isn't science fiction. It's a story that's been unfolding in the shadows for decades. Because the truth hasn't been lost, it's been hidden. And as the walls of secrecy begin to crack, one reality becomes undeniable. We are not alone in the universe. This is Disclosure. Let's dive in. Hello, amazing people. Thank you for joining me this week on the Ryan Files with special guest Timothy Alberino. He's a researcher, explorer, and author who unites ancient history, biblical prophecy, and modern technology in one powerful narrative. His book, Birthright, The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse, reveals how humanity's divine inheritance is being challenged by transhumanism, alien deception, and artificial intelligence. Through the Alberino analysis, Tim exposes the mysteries of lost civilizations, the Watchers of Genesis 6, and the rising post-human world. For me personally, Tim was instrumental in the genesis of the Ryan Files. His work pushed me to go deeper, and that's when the world started to finally make a little bit more sense. Timothy Alberino, thank you so much for joining me this week on the Ryan Files. I really appreciate you coming on, Tim. We met years ago in Peru.
In Cusco.
With a trip with Blurry creatures. Kind of a crazy time in my life, how that all came about and the reasonings behind it. But what an amazing trip and an honor just to spend some time with you and whatnot down there. But I follow you. You're a busy man. And I know you've got a lot going on. We just brought you on this week to just hear. It doesn't really matter what you talk about. It's always interesting. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we met in Cusco. You joined my my public expedition I did to Cusco a few years ago, and I remember the first time I met you. You walked in, and I thought, "My God, I didn't realize that Elvis was on this trip." So it was, And I didn't know you were an Elvis impersonator. I had no idea. So that was really cool, and that was a great trip. We had a lot of fun. But thanks for having me on. Yeah, well, I'm game to talk about whatever you want.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I'll tell you, one of the things that I've really been getting into on this side of things, and then just following what you're into, always interested in this alien deception, whatever you want to call it, whatever the correct terminology is. We live in this world where I think more and more there's this soft disclosure going on, it just feels imminent. It's around the corner in some way, shape, or form. But my interest in it goes deeper because it seems like there's just so many, when you get into the new age side of it and whatnot, man, it's like the pump is primed for something to happen. And there's already a devout following of this stuff that's going to be treating it like gods, so to speak. So always interested in finding out what's the latest and greatest when it comes to disclosure, aliens, craft, are they real, all kinds of stuff. So anything you got on that topic?
Well, I'll start with the last question. Are they real? The answer is yes, they are, 100%. So I interface with obviously with the general public in regard to this topic, but also with people who are members of clandestine UFO research groups, members of Congress, and whistleblowers. And I can tell you that, you have the lower level conversation that's happening in the public space. And there's a lot of chatter on X, on social media about UFOs and the nature of UFOs and are they real and crash retrievals and so forth. But when you get up into these upper echelons of the conversation, the questions aren't, are they real? Are UFOs real? Those questions are already answered at that level. I mean, the crash retrieval program, nobody doubts the existence of the crash retrieval program. Those aren't the questions that are being asked. The questions that are being asked at those levels are, how do we get access to these to the special access programs, to the facilities where the SAPs and the USAPs are being conducted? How do we get hands on the technology? And what races are we interacting with? What is the agenda of these races? How long has the United States government, not has the United States government been interacting with these things, but how long have we been interacting with these entities? And what has been the nature of of that interaction? What kind of bargains have been struck? These are the questions that are taking place at the higher level. So you have the internet chatter, you have the interest of the general public who are still stuck in this cycle of debate, especially among Christians, in regard to the existence or non-existence of these entities. But at the higher levels, it's way, way, way beyond that. So yes, the aliens are real, and whatever that means to you, alien simply, and when I use the term alien, I'm talking about a sentient species that is non-human. Okay, and there's a lot of debate as to whether or not that species is indigenous to the Earth, or does it come from somewhere other than planet Earth? And I think the answer is both of these answers. Both of these questions are valid, and the answer is yes to both of the questions. Yes, they have been on the Earth for a long time, and when I say they, there's not one thing involved here. There's various things involved. Yes, they have been on the Earth for a very long time. In probably some of them, at least one particular race, longer than the human species, but they also don't come from the Earth. At least some of them. And I can say that with a great deal of confidence because I approach it both from a data-based orientation, but also a biblical orientation. So I have a paradigm that is, as you know, and as my audience knows, a paradigm that is founded on the biblical narrative, but also I'm always familiarizing myself with the data set and with the facts that have been presented to me behind the scenes. So the debate really gets hot around the question of A, the nature of these beings, and B, the provenance of these beings. And there's two things that I can say at this point unequivocally. The nature of the beings is biological, okay? The nature of the beings that we have evidence of, and when I say evidence, I'm talking crash retrievals. I'm talking bodies. It's biological. That's the nature. It's not our biology, but it's biological. And the provenance of these beings is very, very likely not planet Earth. Although they have bases here, although they've established a presence here and have been here in some cases for a very long time, some of them, I don't think the Greys, by the way, I think the Greys have been here probably since maybe the mid-1800s. Okay. But that doesn't mean that there haven't been forward operations, surveillance operations, or forward teams, so to speak, that have come here in preparation for the establishment of bases, right? So if we were going to invade a foreign country, the first thing that we do is we send the CIA, and we send the elements of the intelligence community to embed, and then we send the SF guys, the special forces teams, to embed and to prepare in a forward operation to prepare the invasion, to prepare for the invasion force or the combat force that would be coming behind it, and to establish bases, to integrate into the culture, and so forth. This is the way that we do it, and that every modern nation does it. So, in the same way, you could have had, let's be specific to gray aliens. You could have had gray aliens coming to the Earth, surveilling, establishing bases before before they arrived in mass, let's say, sure. Right? And that could have gone back hundreds, perhaps thousands of years, that activity, slowly integrating, slowly building the bases under the sea, under the ground. But certainly the abduction phenomenon does not go further than the late 1800s. So if the primary agenda, if the prime objective of gray aliens is the abduction phenomenon and the breeding program, then they likely were not here, or at least not very active on Earth until the mid to late 1800s. I'm probably giving you more information than you were looking for here, but
that's fascinating.
But this is, my assessment hasn't changed over the last 5 years, let's say. The things that I suspected before have been concretized, have been affirmed through my interaction with various elements in this world. And I'm going to go back to this point I was making earlier. I'm seeing there's an interesting rift that's formed between the public conversation and the conversation that's happening at the higher levels. The special access programs absolutely exist, and these are where this is where the legacy program is housed, within these compartmentalized special access programs. And those programs, because of the Freedom of Information Act, were once housed under the government, the DoD, let's say, generally speaking, the Department of Defense, but because of the Freedom of Information Act, that citizens can now make inquiries into programs to find out what the government is doing, they decoupled the legacy program from the DoD, from the Department of Defense, from the Pentagon apparatus, and compartmentalized it within various programs under the auspices of the aerospace contractors.
Yeah.
And maybe about 6, 7, 8, maybe even up to 10 of them. And so what this has done is it's made it almost impossible. It's like the proverbial shell game, right? Where you're constantly shuffling the cups and hiding the marble, and you can shuffle it around. And the American public, there's no oversight. The American public, and when you talk about Congress, you're talking about the American public. These are the representatives of the American people. There's no oversight. There's no constitutional oversight. There's no congressional oversight anymore. So now you have what are essentially rogue elements,
right,
who are in possession of extremely important information and exceedingly advanced technology. And they don't interface with each other. There's no conference of aerospace contracting companies. It's all compartmentalized. And then even within the aerospace apparatus, within each company, the information is further compartmentalized. And the activities are subcontracted. So the aerospace company, let's say Lockheed Martin, they can have a program that's attempting to reverse engineer this particular aspect of a crash retrieval asset, right? Propulsion system or something, and they may not have the whole thing. Another contractor may have the other piece of this puzzle, right? But over here at Lockheed Martin, they have, this is sequestered within one of their special access programs. You need the right clearances, and the individuals working on this do not really interface with each other. So it's compartmentalized to such an extent to where there's almost no sharing of knowledge, and then certain aspects of this are subbed out, right? So you may have a an aerospace contractor who owns the facility and is housing some kind of exotic craft or material, non-human, but they have a recovery program of their own that's being operated by a subcontractor. You see what I mean? So I'm just trying to express how complex this web is, how complex this network has become, and to some extent, the government has lost control of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine you as if you're happen to be a congressman and you are making inquiries into the legacy program, you are immediately faced with this impenetrable web. Because even if you encounter somebody that knows something, they only know one aspect. They can only pull on one thread of this network, of this web. And so it's so highly compartmentalized that it's difficult to imagine that there's any one person who has a handle on the whole thing.
Yeah. Wow.
And so when that happens, you get rogue institutions, you get rogue organizations. The technology falls into the hands of nefarious people in some cases because it's outside of it's outside of constitutional oversight at this point. And this is, one of the primary concerns at the congressional level is this needs to come back under constitutional oversight.
Right.
This needs to come back under the oversight, not just of the Pentagon, but of Congress. And so there are efforts being made behind the scenes, very noble efforts, very strategic efforts to try and rein in this mess.
Yeah.
In the effort to hide this stuff from the American people. And because of the FOIA Act, they've created a web, they've created an absolute chaotic mess that is out of control. And in one aspect of this is understandable because we want to hide our secrets from our adversaries. So if citizens can make FOIA requests, you can start to expose programs, legitimate national security interests that can be damaging to the United States, to the security apparatus. That's understandable. But that wasn't the full motivation. I don't even think it was a primary motivation. The primary motivation has been to hide this reality from the American populace and then from the citizens of the world. There's financial interests involved, and then there's a power struggle involved behind the scenes. And then I think above and beyond all of these motivations is that there have been serious crimes committed, crimes against humanity. I would go further. I would frame this in a theological context, and I would say severe transgressions against the God of heaven, against the Maker himself. So you're dealing with sinister activities that are criminal, and that if the truth of what's been going on for the last 5 decades or so comes to light, then there's going to be a lot of criminality. There's going to be a lot of people implicated. It's going to implicate elements of the United States government, certainly the military-industrial complex, and it's going to be some of the most sinister things anybody has ever imagined that have been taking place. And to some extent, to some level, we have been complicit in anti-human activity. And what I mean by that is the potential creation of hybrids, human-alien hybrids, both on our side of the equation, on the human side, and on the alien side, because we've been covering up and complicit in the alien abduction phenomenon. And what I mean by complicit in it is that I do believe, and I think the more I press, the more I interact with people behind the scenes, it appears that the famous Eisenhower Treaty, what's sometimes called the Greada Treaty, is real, that it did happen.
Wow. And
that we've struck a Faustian bargain behind the scene, specifically with the gray alien faction, that is really, I guess the simplest term would be criminal, because we have allowed citizens of our nation to be abducted against their will
Yeah.
and subjected to a breeding program,
Hmm.
and because that's what it amounts to, and in exchange we received technological insight from that faction, from the Greys. So that's one of the more, I would say that's one of the more controversial and explosive revelations that's come out in the Greada contract, Eisenhower, that's come out in ufology over the decades. And as I said, it's shockingly, from my point of view, again, understanding the lore, but then communicating with people at the higher levels, it looks like it's true. Looks like it happened.
Well, you just unpacked a bunch there, Tim. I wouldn't expect less. So I oftentimes think about this in the same way as AI. We talk about AI all the time. And Elon Musk a few years back was like, hey, let's just slow down for a second. Well, nobody's going to slow down, because the moment this company slows down, this company gets ahead, or this government gets ahead. Nobody's going to slow down, and the guardrails are going to be taken off. And it's kind of scary. This is a snowball effect, avalanche effect going down the hill.
That's right.
It's very similar in that these companies or these special access programs, they have a lot of power. Knowledge is power. Therefore, they have a lot of knowledge, and they have a lot of power. And the fact that they want to keep it that way, that's human nature. But do you believe that we live in a world today? And this is kind of the thing. Like, do we live in a world today where we can trust every person in Congress? And I'm not downplaying.
Well, the answer is no. We've never lived in that world.
Right. So, because you can just, I'm not going to name names, but there's a couple people I can imagine getting this information. You know about leaks happening all the time. That comes into probably play as part of the problem. It's not an excuse, but it's just, is it possible for it to change, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Well, there is a very valiant effort, a valiant war being waged behind the scenes to bring these what amount to illegal activities right now, under the oversight of Congress. And let me rephrase that, to rectify, to expose to some extent, and to rectify the illicit activities that have been happening behind the scenes, and to bring the legacy program under back under the control of the governmental apparatus, Congress and the Pentagon, basically the Congress and the Department of Defense. So, and that effort is real. It's not feigned. And there are individuals in Congress and in government in general, and some of the agencies, who are determined and who are running ops to try and get this done. And they're met with a lot of resistance. At the congressional level, it's not necessarily like, well, some of these guys are threatened. Some of the congressmen have been threatened directly, and I know that. But it's more like, rather than a direct confrontation. So what the government does in response, as soon as the narrative starts getting out of control, and everybody has a cell phone with relatively good camera on it, you can't hide the phenomenon anymore. You can't tell people that the phenomenon isn't real, which is what they used to do. So the response is, and now Congress begins to take an interest in the phenomenon, and let's go back to the publication of the New York Times piece back in 2017, the Nimitz incident, and so forth. So what does the government do in response? When I say the government, I'm referring to the disclosure fact. I mean the non-disclosure faction. What my friend Richard Dolan describes as the secrecy group. the group that wants to keep the lid on all of this and wants the status quo to continue in regard to the cover-up. What do? Their response isn't to try and shut it down and come out and reject the claims that are put forward in the New York Times. Rather, what they do is they create an investigative office at the Pentagon, Arrow. And it's like, oh, hey, we're interested in this phenomenon also. And you know what? We're going to investigate it. So we're going to create Arrow, the all-domain anomaly research office. And we're going to lead the charge in investigating this. And then we're going to brief Congress on what we find. And so that was created to satisfy the public interest, curiosity, and to give the illusion that the government's also interested in this topic, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. But also, Arrow was created to diffuse the growing interest at the congressional level in the Senate and House, and to dissuade further investigative efforts. Right. And so how do they do that? Well, what Arrow does is it'll take, for example, I know this for sure, okay? I know that this is what they do. They'll take, 10, let's just put a number out there, 10 incidents, UFO incidents, and they'll do this in a briefing with the Congressional UAP caucus, for example. And they'll have the congressman there, and then they'll go through 10 incidents, and they'll take layups, right? Incidents that are easy to debunk, and they'll debunk 9 of them conclusively. This is a Mylar balloon, this is a flock of seagulls, whatever, conclusively debunked. And then they'll have this 10th one where they go, this one we don't know about yet. We're still looking into this one. Right. And so what this does is it gives the illusion that this official Pentagon office is interested in getting to the truth, but at the same time is deflating the expectations of the congressional members, especially in the UAP caucus, and dissuading further inquiry into the topic.
Right.
And it's a very, very high-level psychological operation. And it also gives fodder to the skeptics, because they're just going to parrot what Arrow, the findings of Arrow, and it is a very efficient way to control the narrative, both again at the congressional level and in regard to the public conversation that's revolving around this topic, and it's been very effective. And then what happens is you get. And this isn't necessarily a psychological operation. This is just a product of the UFO community, right? The UFO research community is then you get hearings, and we've had 3 so far. And these hearings are conducted in the beginning they're all conducted in good faith, but the hearings are conducted at a let's say. They're conducted at a fairly highly professional level in the beginning, because in the very beginning, the situation hasn't yet been compromised by particular certain UFO celebrity figures haven't compromised the scene yet at the congressional level. And so you get whistleblowers, and then you get really inquisitive congressmen. And then they interact, and then you get some explosive revelations, and the congressmen are taken aback because most of them are green in regard to ufology, right?
Right.
And you get the most explosive revelation, which was the original one from David Grush. And Grush reveals, because Grush worked in intelligence, and he reveals that the legacy program is absolutely real. That we have recovered non-human, quote unquote, spaceships or something like whatever the terminology it was, and biologicals, and you get that what people refer to the ontological shock that hits the congressmen who are making these inquiries, because they're not familiar with ufology. and you get a very visceral and real reaction. And that first hearing was very impactful, powerful. But then what happens is you get the and I don't want to say this to denigrate anyone in particular, but then the UFO circus comes to town.
Yeah.
And particular personalities begin to attach themselves to congressmen and congresswomen, and then the whole thing begins to degrade in regard to, because you have a power struggle. You always have a power struggle among UFO personalities. Yeah. Everybody wants to be the guy that's most connected, and that the public goes the go-to UFO guy, right? Yeah. And so though that is in the mix now. And I'm just sort of look, I've been in meetings and regarding UFOs and stuff lately, and so this is all sort of what's been percolating in my brain, and I'm just sort of dumping it on you right now.
That's great.
So you have this situation in which these original explosive allegations hit the public, and there's a genuine response. It forces a response. It forces an inquiry at the congressional level, and the Pentagon to create the all domain anomaly research office, or ARROW, whatever the acronym stands for. I'm not sure if I got that right. And then you have, in the public, you have a lot of newcomers to the topic who flood social media, who before 2017 were not interested in the topic.
Right.
But after the New York Times publication of the Nimitz incident, and especially leading up into 2020 and the first hearing, you have this new interest in the public space, and all these people who were not students of ufology for the last several decades, they flood the zone with all of these newfangled ideas about the phenomenon.
Right.
And all these, all of these following the celebrity culture in ufology and coming up with all these newfangled ideas. And so there's a lot of chatter down here, like I said in the beginning, at the public level, at the level of the public discourse. There's a lot of chatter about interdimensionality and supernaturalism and time travelers and all these different things, right?
Right.
And it's not rooted in OG ufology. It's not rooted in all of the research that's been done, the foundational work that was done in various aspects of the phenomenon over the decades. Right. And we're talking about research that was compiled by excellent ufologists such as the late Leonard Stringfield in the realm of crash retrievals or alien abduction, guys like Dr. David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins and Carla Turner and so forth, and all of these people who sort of laid the foundation. We have accrued, because of their research, a body of facts, a body of evidence, and a body of facts in regard to the phenomenon that has been in recent times discarded to some extent. Discard is not the right word. All these new people who've come to the topic are just unfamiliar with this material.
Yeah.
Because their knowledge of the phenomenon starts in 2017.
Right.
And so what I'm trying to convey is that there's this, as I said, there's this disconnect between the lower level public discourse and then the higher level discourse with actionable information up here,
right, and
certain facts that have been established at this level based on the realities that are known, crash retrievals, biologicals, and so forth, and all of this upper level reality, right,
yeah,
is a confirmation of the old school ufology.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if I'm conveying this right. So you've got this confirmation of all the old school ufology, guys like Stanton Friedman, for example, and all these guys that that postulated certain things, but the new UFO community is unfamiliar with that, and so they're still playing the game of they're still playing with all these newfangled ideas.
Well, and they're also trying to play catch up.
Right, but not catching up in regard to familiarizing themselves with the decades old research in ufology. Rather, they're just following the celebrities.
Right. And those old guys
attaching themselves to one personality or the other. And so, or they saw this documentary or that documentary that's been made in the last 5 years. And so that's the state. What I'm trying to do for you, I guess, Ryan, is, and in my own mind here, is organize my thoughts and convey the current state, as you were asking the question earlier, the current state of disclosure and this what's beginning to look like a circus, a disclosure circus more than anything. And so that's my personal perspective, being both down here at the public discourse level, but also up here at the upper echelon of the discourse that's happening at the governmental level and so forth, and whistleblowers. And I'll add one more thing. And then you get whistleblowers.
Right.
What the UFO community has been looking for decades, whistleblowers at the congressional level. You get whistleblowers who come forward, David Grush, Lou Elizondo, primarily those two. They come forward and they reveal information that is a direct confirmation to the old school, to the work of the old school ufologists, and their testimony is rejected by a huge portion of UFO Twitter or UFO X, for example, because there's the idea, the perception, especially since COVID, the perception is if there's a whistleblower that's being taken seriously at the congressional level, then it's got to be misinformation, disinformation, or deception, right? So the very thing that ufologists have longed for decades, testimony at the congressional level, happens in confirmation of what we've known for decades because of that foundational, that ufological foundation that's been laid by these old school researchers, and it's rejected out of hand by so many people.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating to me, and the reason that they were rejected is because this person was connected to the CIA, or this person was military or Air Force intelligence, so obviously they're lying to you.
Right. I went and saw.
It's because,
yeah,
go ahead. I've been bloviating here long enough.
It's cool. I went and saw Lou Elizondo talk last year, and it was a great talk. I appreciated it. But what was so funny is the moment I start telling people about it, or I, just said, "Hey, I went and saw Lou online," but everybody and their mother was coming back with like, "Oh, well, he's just out there spreading disinformation." So, there's, like you said, there's this. It's like,
yeah, and then you can ask them, well, what specifically,
right,
is the disinformation? Well, Lou is attached to Army intelligence or the CIA.
Yes.
No, that's not a description of the disinformation.
Right.
All you're doing is saying, well, because this guy was associated with XYZ, or even because he unwittingly, and I know Lou, unwittingly published a couple of UFO photos that turned out to be in one case a chandelier, in the other case like an irrigation circle, and was very embarrassed about it and very apologetic behind the scenes about it, and I think publicly, because the guy makes a mistake and he's associated with the intelligence community. It's just everybody writes him off. He's a disinfo agent. He's a liar. He's this. He's that. Well, I don't care about any of that. All I care about are the claims.
Right.
That's it. What is the testimony? What is David Grush's testimony? I don't care who he worked for. I don't care. What is his testimony? What is Lou Elizondo's testimony? That's what matters to me.
Yeah.
What is Admiral Gallaudet's testimony?
Yeah.
I don't care about this other crap because this is all drama. This is all reality TV drama that happens on social media. All that matters to me are the claims. And the claims that all of these individuals have made conform to what has been known in ufology for decades. So you have the body of evidence down here in the data, and the testimony of the witnesses conforms to the data. So from an objective perspective, they're telling the truth. So where's the deception? Where's the deception? Where's the misdirection over here? And what they're saying is in direct contradiction to Arrow. So what Lou says and what David says and what the other whistleblowers have said is in direct contradiction to the messaging coming from Arrow. That's the official Pentagon apparatus. That's the one you should doubt. Yeah. And you know, are some of these individuals telling the whole truth? No.
Right.
They haven't been authorized to tell the whole truth.
Exactly.
And people say, see, if they're authorized to say something, that means it must be by de facto deception. Because why would the government tell the American people the truth? Because the government is not monolithic. The government is made up of people like you, people like me, people like the audience listening to this podcast. It is made up of people with different persuasions, different moral compasses, and some of these individuals believe that the lid should be sealed tight on this topic. The public does not have the need to know, and that national interests, national security interests reign supreme over everything. That's the disclosure. That's the secrecy group. And then you have individuals over here who've said, this has gone on long enough. The American people need to be informed at some level because there's criminal activity over here and we need congressional oversight. That's the other group. Both of those groups exist simultaneously. They're both fighting behind the scenes. It's a factional contest that's happening behind the scenes. So yes, you have elements of the governmental apparatus, the intelligence community, the military-industrial complex, who are attempting to keep the lid tight on this thing and discredit everybody and anything that has to do with it. But then you have this side with the whistleblowers. And let me tell you this, there are a lot more whistleblowers that have come forth behind the scenes, not publicly. Why haven't they come forth publicly? Because there is no official apparatus in place to protect them and their families and their pensions. There's no apparatus. And Congressman Tim Burchett drafted legislation, and he had the support of Burleson and Luna and others at the congressional level, tried to get it passed to protect whistleblowers, and it keeps getting rejected. So why don't more people come forward? Because they don't want to die. They don't want their families threatened. They don't want their careers ruined.
Yeah.
We had someone come forward, David Grush, whose professional career was ruined. He basically became unemployed after he came forward. And it caused him a lot of grief. And thank God that Congressman Eric Burleson had the insight to employ David Grush himself. So now Grush is working at Burleson's office very strategically, and they're doing a lot of great work behind the scene, by the way. Oh. Those guys are doing a lot of great work behind the scenes. They don't get the accolades they deserve. Instead, they get all the criticism. They don't get the accolades they deserve. And so that's that's just one example. David Grush, military, a distinguished career in the military and in the intelligence community, comes forward to tell the American people that about the Legacy Crash Retrieval Program. And what happens? He becomes gainfully unemployed. I don't know if that's really the right way to say it. He becomes unemployed, right? Yeah. And unemployable.
Right.
In the profession that he spent his life building, building up his what's the word I'm looking for here? His portfolio, right, in his professional career, and suddenly he's kicked out because he told the truth, and people wonder why more whistleblowers don't come forward, and there were threats behind the scene against him, his life, not just his career, his life.
Wow.
And so the main problem we have is there is no protection for whistleblowers. There's no protection for their lives, the lives of their families, and their careers and pensions. And that's part of the battle happening behind the scenes. So you have the disclosure faction fighting for protection for whistleblowers, and you have the secrecy faction fighting against it. And as this battle is taking place at the higher echelons, you have dozens and dozens of whistleblowers coming to the congressmen and to the various governmental apparatus who are coming with stories and are coming with information, but they're not going to go public until they're waiting for this infrastructure to be put into place that will protect them, that will allow them to tell the truth without destroying their lives. Right. And all of those hypocrites on social media and UFO X and so forth who say, well, they should come forward no matter what and tell the truth. You wouldn't.
Right. Easier said than done.
Yeah. You would not do it if your life was going to be threatened, the lives of your family members and your financial future. You wouldn't do it. So it's very frustrating. I'm both encouraged at what I've learned, and I'm both very frustrated. I'm frustrated by the public's response to a lot of this, and there's you've got these debunkers out there, professional debunkers on social media, the guys who interact with my posts or whatever, and they're simply not. They're looking at it from the same level as the lay person. When I say lay, I just mean the general public. They're just looking at it from afar. They're not privy to the information at the upper echelons. They don't know. And so they're trying to debunk something down here, but they're not in these conversations up here. And were they in these conversations, they wouldn't be skeptics anymore.
I get it.
So it's a very interesting landscape right now. And I don't know if you want to talk about the Atlas situation, because I know a lot of people are, and I know you've done that already on your show, but I know a lot of people are very anxious about Atlas right now.
Well, I do want to talk about Atlas. Let me ask you one question, and I don't know to what degree you can even or want to talk about this, but let me just throw it out there. I'm a student of World War II history. Find it fascinating. World War II Germany, the technology they had. Obviously, the war goes the way it goes. Operation Paperclip. During some of this time, stuff with Jack Parsons, freely admitting, "Hey, I'm in the occult, and I'm using my occult connections to get knowledge to make the best rocket ever." And then I'm going to go out in the desert and do the Babylon, working with L. Ron Hubbard, and occult is what I'm talking about. There's a lot of connections with the occult and World War II technology and whatnot that fostered, some might say, an occult connection in government, in some of these higher technological, programs and whatnot, where you're trying to get information from the other side. Does any of that in any way, shape, or form play into this struggle? Because you start talking about abductions. Harvard professor said there's like 21 points where it's the same thing as SRA. There's a lot of just occult connections with this.
Well, let me contest that right away. Alien abduction and SRA have nothing to do with each other. Okay. There are no points. So the only thing that you could say is both of these are traumatic incidents. Sure. That's it. The alien, because there's an understanding of alien abduction that's an inch deep and a mile wide on the internet. Okay. And it's been conflated with demonic activity. It's been conflated with satanic ritual abuse. There's no data there. It's just opinions. It's chirping birds on podcasts and stuff. And it's information, in some cases, information that has been fabricated out of whole cloth. Information that has been generated by the fantasies of mentally ill individuals, that has been perpetuated, propagated on the internet, and has been taken as fact. And so you have a fantasy world over here, not just into which the abduction phenomenon is accommodated, but all kinds of things that is not based on reality. You have particular individuals out there who are mentally ill, who are perhaps themselves victims of abuse, sexual abuse, maybe by family members, and who have recast their abuse, recast themselves. Let me rephrase this. Who because you can't live. Let's break this down psychologically. So let's say that, and I'm going to close the loop on this in a minute, but let's say that you have endured unthinkable sexual abuse in your life by especially family members, and that strips you of dignity, of your dignity. It steals your dignity away. It gives you it causes you to have to carry this perception of yourself around that's a victim mentality, not a victim mentality that we talk about in popular culture, but a victim, almost like a victim psychosis, where this happened to you, you were defenseless to stop it, and it diminishes your self-worth. It robs you of your dignity, and you now have to go through the rest of your life carrying this ugly burden, right? So what some people do, especially in the severe cases, satanic ritual abuse, for example, what some people do in order to cope, it's a coping mechanism, in order to be able to survive in the real world, right? To go to your job and go to the grocery store and buy groceries and pay your taxes and interact civilly with your family and friends. What people do is they reframe rather this terrible incident or this episode in their life. They reframe it, and they change the parameters, they change the details, they change the story into a fantastical narrative, and then they recast themselves in the narrative, not as a victim, but as a hero. Okay? And when you do that, you've taken the trauma, this ugly, terrible, traumatizing event, you've reframed it, you've fantasized it. Let me give you something a little bit more specific. You're raped when you're young. You take that scenario and you change it so that now you're not just raped by your dad or something. You were a participant in a top secret program that was breeding Nephilim, and that you were an assassin. You were trained to be an assassin within this program, and so forth and so on. And Joseph Mengele, it wasn't just your father who was raping you, it was Joseph Mengele who was doing experimentations on you. And then I'm weaving in, by the way, narratives I heard from individuals personally over the years.
Yeah.
And then you weren't just this unfortunate child who was subjected to this abuse by his family member. Now, because that's a victim, now you're the hero in the story, right? And now you're going to come forward and expose this conspiracy because you're now the hero figure. This happens all the time now on the internet.
Yeah.
And these individuals, they get, I'm going to use the modern term, platformed. And then their stories get picked up in cyberspace, propagated, and it begins to form it gets integrated into people's minds as reality. So now you have reality in which a reality in which these people's stories are true, but they're not. And now people are using this substrate, this foundational story that they've heard to derive from it doctrine in the worst cases, to derive from it a perspective of the UFO phenomenon, to derive from it a perspective whatever. And so you have literally a fantasy world that's just burgeoning online right now. And it's within that fantasy world that the abduction phenomenon is related to sexual satanic ritual abuse. Because when you look at the data, again, going back to the OG ufologists, the data accrued by very competent researchers, very, very carefully, it doesn't conform whatsoever to satanic ritual abuse. It doesn't conform whatsoever to out-of-body experiences. It doesn't conform whatsoever to near-death experiences. It doesn't. It is its own unique phenomenon. Its own unique phenomenon. And it doesn't, by the way, conform to the stories of sky people and fairies and gnomes and all of that medieval lore, right? I'm sorry, for those who are huge Vallée fans, and I'm a fan of Vallée myself. Jacques Vallée was his equation. I mean, that's not the right way to say it. What's the word I'm looking for? His comparison of the abduction phenomenon with the fantastical stories from medieval times is invalid, because the phenomenon does not comport. It does not conform to those fairy tale stories. It is systematic. It is methodical. It is the same everywhere at all times. And there has never been, ever, in the history of mankind, a systematic program of alien abduction like has been happening and is still happening and has been happening since the late 1800s. This is a unique thing. It stands alone. And people, for whatever reason, are desperately trying to lump it into, again, satanic ritual abuse or the thing with Vallée is that the phenomenon has been wearing different masks, so to speak. Back in the medieval times, the alien presence was presenting itself as fairies and gnomes and sky people and so forth to conform to the cultural zeitgeist of the age. And then today, the phenomenon is now wearing the mask of the gray alien and the flying saucer and conforming to the cultural zeitgeist of the modern age. And then if we go back to the turn of the century, the phenomenon was presenting itself within the cultural context of steampunk fantasy. Jules Verne, for example, with these, this was called the mystery airship phenomenon, in which people were seeing these large, magnificent airships with balloons and propellers and all these kind of things, and pilots, human pilots. That's Jules Verne steampunk. And so they said, aha, the phenomenon is just conforming to the cultural zeitgeist. Well, the problem is it's not accurate. Let's talk for a second about the airship phenomenon back at the turn of the century. The airship, turn of the 20th century, the airship phenomenon, two things. A large body of that material is fantastical, embellished, sensational, and totally invalid. Okay? A huge percentage of that. It was newspapers who at the time, periodicals, were in competition with each other. They did this with giants also, by the way. So you have a lot of the material is very fantastical, and the objective of the newspapers was obviously to attract attention with these wild stories, right? So you can shave off, even with the stories of giants, and the recovery of the bones of giants, you can shave off like 80% right now. You can shave it off of the airship stuff and of the giants. You can that top 80% is fluff, is foam, right? But you're left with 10 to 20% of reality as it pertains to giants, as it pertains to the quote unquote airship phenomenon. And when you deal with that last 10, 20%, again, after removing the fantastical element, you have concrete historical fact, both with the Smithsonian's own records in regard to the recovery of the bones of giants and undeniable records that pertain to that. Abraham Lincoln, who talked about the bones of that ancient race of giants. They're in the mounds of America, right? And then on the ufological side, you have accounts of craft that are entirely consistent with a modern UFO phenomenon. Saucers, cigar-shaped craft, gray aliens, the whole deal, right? So the phenomenon wasn't changing its aspect. It wasn't presenting itself conforming to the zeitgeist of that era. We were fantasizing. We were injecting our cultural, our cultural, that's what I'm looking for here. Let's just say our cultural ideas, our cultural concepts is what I was looking for, onto the phenomenon. Okay. So, but when you distill the information down to raw data, you have something that looks very much like what's going on today. And the reason why I bring that up is because the same is the case for the abduction phenomenon. When you remove the foam from the top of the cup, so to speak, and you deal with just the data and the reality that has been confirmed and affirmed with many cases, thousands of cases of abductees, cases, by the way, which I'm still getting today, and people I interact with and who come to me all the time. The abduction phenomenon has not ended. It's not over. The breeding program, it went into, it's maturated. It's entering new phases, but it didn't go away, as so many talking heads on social media want to say. It's not true. It has not ceased. When you distill that down, you have a body of data that is conclusive, right? It's a systematic program. And the purpose of the program, it's not experimentation. It's not messaging, by the way. It's not new age messaging. Abductees, for the most part, unless they're recounting screen memories, do not receive messages from gray aliens. They're just subjected to the breeding program. Sperm is taken from the males, eggs and ova are taken from females. Zygotes are implanted, fetuses are harvested, and so forth. And that's the reality. That's what's been going on in the beginning, and that's what's still going on today. Although now we're dealing with what Dr. Jacobs describes as advanced human alien hybrids, as he denominates them, and their integration into human society. Okay, that's where we are today. So, and that's sort of what I was talking about earlier, and I'll shut up here. But that's what I was talking about earlier when I was saying that there's a disconnect between the newfangled ideas being propagated by the newcomers to the UFO research community who don't have deep roots. And so you have all of these wild ideas popping up. And meanwhile, up here at the upper echelons, people are dealing with the stone cold facts, which conform to the data that has been accrued over decades by competent ufologists. And that's my soapbox pontification.
Well, you covered a lot and kind of opened my eyes to some things to maybe a little bit of discernment as you go through with all this stuff. I do have some people,
and I'm not implicating any of the guests that you've had on your program. I don't know who they are.
Sure.
So I'm not taking aim at anybody that you've talked to, because I don't know who you've talked to.
Right. No, not at all. I do have some people coming on, people from MUFON and whatnot that are OGs kind of in the community. It'll be interesting to talk to them and hear some of their perspectives and whatnot. So um, it's all fascinating. It's a little scary, might be the wrong word. Maybe it should be the right word. I don't know, but it's out there, man. And I appreciate someone who can come on and just kind of lay it out there. I appreciate it, man. Thank you. What about this?
Well,
Atlas
like I said,
3i?
these are the thoughts that have been ruminating in my mind based on, again, my interaction in the public space and then my interaction with the other group that's at the higher echelon. So
I got you. We got this comment. We've talked about it on this particular program. There's just like the UFO thing, there's so many different sides to this.
yeah,
Some are, this is an alien spaceship. Some are, no, it's just a comet. Maybe the truth is somewhere in between. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
okay, so there's not a whole lot that anybody can say about 3i Atlas. Let's start there. Avi Loeb is really at the center of this. He's really been highlighting this and drawing a lot of attention to it and raising some alarms. Although I think Avi probably behind the scenes thinks it's a natural body, but we should be asking questions. We should be not rejecting the possibility, not rejecting offhand the possibility that there could be something much more interesting going on here, that there could be an artificial component to this. That's where I am. I believe that it could go either way at this point. It's a 50-50 in my mind. This could be a natural body that is, of course, displaying some very unusual attributes. Or you could be looking at something much more interesting. You could be looking at something artificial. Or you could be looking at something artificial embedded into something natural, right? Like you could be looking at some sort of a probe or something that's been concealed within a cosmic body. There's a lot of play there. The comet is unusual. The body, rather, we don't know if it's a comet. The object is unusual. It's displaying some very unusual attributes. And at the very least, it's forcing astrophysicists to kind of rethink some things that they thought they had figured out. And NASA has initiated some of its protocols recently that some of its I'm trying to think of the exact terminology here. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but NASA has initiated some of its protocols, and I think there may be something unprecedented about this. Protocols that pertain to potential impacts of cosmic bodies,
Wow.
or something else, maybe a potential impact / invasion, right? Something along those lines. Now, that's not to say that anyone is necessarily expecting a invasion of aliens, but I've been told that that 3i Atlas is definitely causing a lot of consternation in DC. It is being taken very seriously, definitely by NASA, and at the DC level. There's a lot of trepidation right now. And I think part of the alarm at the governmental level is the possibility of a near-Earth pass, because it's hard to predict the trajectory of this thing because it's not conforming to what we thought were the laws of physics in regard to these bodies, these cosmic bodies coming into our solar system. And so there's definitely some concern about an impact. But there's also concern that this thing is artificial. And that I can tell you, that I can report. So nobody really knows at this point. And there's a lot of fake images and stuff circulating, by the way. We live in the age of AI now. So don't believe anything you see in regard to images. Nobody knows what this thing is. Nobody. And I've talked to people, who have connections with the intelligence community, and even at that level, nobody really knows what this thing is. Everybody is watching it, And there's a lot more concern about it behind the scenes than the public is being told. And Avi is being, I think, honest. I think he's just conveying the honest perception of a lot of astrophysicists behind the scenes. Like, this thing doesn't look entirely natural. So it's either one of two things. Either A, we've got a lot of gaps in our knowledge about how cosmic bodies move through the solar system, or B, we're right about what we think in that regard, and this is not a natural cosmic body. Yeah. That's it. Those are the options. So Avi posted the other day, I don't have it in front of me, but he posted something to the effect of, take your vacations before, I think it was October 27th or 29th. In other words, he expects us to have a lot more information about this thing in just a few days, because it's going to be coming close enough to where our telescopes and some of our orbital telescopes and Earth-based telescopes are going to start to get a much better look and have a better idea of the trajectory. And the question is, the real problem now is you have a lot of, you have your big telescopes, the Vatican Observatory, the ones that are in Arizona, the ones that the government operates and universities operate around the world. And those are very, very high-powered telescopes. But the technology that was available only in those kind of telescopes 15 years ago is now available to amateur astronomers.
All right.
So you have a lot of amateurs who are going to be aiming their telescopes at this thing. So you're not really going to be able to cover it up if it's a freaking spaceship.
Right.
Is the point. So, it's going to go around the sun. That's the current trajectory. Some people are saying it's not going to it's not really going to come close to the Earth. Others are saying it very well could. So the point is, I think that the hype around this object is warranted. It's warranted. I cannot tell you whether or not this is an artificial or organic body. I think it could be either at this point. I don't think there's enough. I don't think anybody has enough data. Now, and this is interesting to me, because I have heard behind the scenes, I've heard some chatter behind the scenes and from various sources that there is a body that is approaching the Earth. There is a object that's coming, and it's not 3I Atlas. It's further off in space, deep space, and it has been identified as artificial. Or at least allegedly identified as artificial, and it's got a lot of people legitimately worried. Because that one in some respects it's much more definitive.
Right.
That it's artificial. And that one's way in the background. And that one's not showing up for a couple of years. So
does it have a designation yet?
No, not that I'm aware of. And I've heard this chatter from various sources. And of course then you have what's his name? Jeremy Corbell. There's a video of him circulating where he was in some kind of an interview, and he said that we're going to be told that there's this body coming in from outer space and it's artificial, it's a spaceship or something, and it's going to be a lie. He's out there saying that. And I don't know what his sources are. Maybe the same as mine, but I don't know about it. I haven't heard anything about it being a deception. All I've heard about is there's a high degree of confidence that it's artificial. Wow. And it's not 3I Atlas.
Yeah.
So is 3I Atlas, again, let's go over the three possibilities. Is it A, just a cosmic body that's defying some of our ideas about how those bodies are supposed to move around in our solar system? Is it B, a spaceship? Because that's what it would amount to, an artificial, intelligently controlled object. Or C, is it the combination of both? Is it something artificial embedded in something organic to disguise it, to conceal it? as
like
it moves into our solar system. But yet it's the trajectory is being manipulated, right? Those are
yeah,
the three options. And
yeah.
I don't lean in any direction specifically at this point. I think they're all I think they're all equally valid.
Yeah,
You know,
there's
and
some
there's nothing else
anomalies.
that could be.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there's anomalies. I just had Dr. Rogers on talking about whistleblowers at NASA. Uh, guy, 31 space missions, doctor on the stuff, and says he saw a aircraft in a hangar that was a saucer that had the U.S. Air Force logo on it. Anyway, he wanted to talk about 3ILs too, and one point he made was there's a lot of nickel. We're seeing a lot of nickel. Well, nickel in natural, formation, there's going to be a lot of iron with it. You have to extract nickel from iron. We're not
That's
seeing a
right.
lot
Yeah.
of iron. We're just seeing a lot of nickel, and that
Yeah.
that's kind of an anomaly. So there's no doubt that there's anomalies. I do find
There's no
it.
question that there's anomalies. I
Yeah,
don't think any, the consensus, it seems to me, the consensus in the astrological community is that this is anomalous. This object is anomalous. And it is portrayed, it has attributes that are unusual and unexpected. There's no question about it. So it's I don't think Avi is making noise about it just for attention. I
right.
think he's just publicly conveying, as I said earlier, what astrophysicists are thinking and saying behind the scenes.
Yeah,
So it's significant, even if it just turns out to be a natural body. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to have to readjust some of the things that we thought about the nature of these sort of objects, their trajectories, their attributes, and their physics when they come into our solar system. So it is significant. There's no question about it. And there's people out there who are taking advantage of this story, as they do with every story, to inflate it, to conflate it, to aggrandize their own. Aggrandize isn't the right word. Embellish the story to take advantage of the attention and get more subscribers. That's always going to happen. But the reality is nobody knows what the hell this thing is. That's the reality. Nobody knows.
yeah,
And it's interesting to me because I'm hearing from some sources that this other thing we know about, that's further out and
yeah.
moving faster, by the way, that we this one we know about, but this other one in front of it, nobody knows. So it's a strange paradox. But if Avi Loeb is right, then just in a few days we should have a lot more information.
There you go. There you go.
And don't take a vacation before the 20. I think it was 29th of October is what he said. So, and that's probably hyperbole.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Interesting time to be alive, Tim. No doubt about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement. There's a lot going on, and it's from my perspective, it's especially interesting because years ago, when I began in this field 10 years ago or whatever, 12 years ago, I had a lot of hypotheses related to ancient history, related to alternative historical narratives, related to giants, related to aliens and things like this. And it's interesting as I get older and as I'm interacting with different people, how some of these ideas, some of these hypotheses are becoming concretized into just stone cold fact. And I'm able to just say, yep, that one's true, that one's true, that one's true. This one, not so much. And it is a very interesting time in which, people are feeling more comfortable. People who've had experiences in the military, in the intelligence community, or whatever, who've had experiences. The environment's different today because you're not going to just be written off as a kook, as a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist. People are taking these testimonies much more serious today than they would have been taken a decade ago. And so people are coming out. And we're talking about people who have proof of their involvement in these operations, people who've been on the crash retrievals, people who saw or heard about or have firsthand knowledge of the Kandahar giant. These kind of things.
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, these were just internet conspiracies. Today, and public doesn't see this because these people aren't yet willing to come forward, as I was saying earlier, publicly, because there's no protections.
All right.
But guys like me, researchers who are in the field, are interacting with these people because they're coming to us first. We're like the first level.
Right.
And they come to people like us to sort of position and wait till the security apparatus is in place so that they can come forward publicly. And let me say finally that there is an effort, as I said before, I'm going to say it again, there is an effort in Congress to put that whistleblower security, to construct that mechanism, that edifice for whistleblower security. That's happening behind the scenes. So it's going to get crazier, is what I'm trying to say.
I just like to know the truth. I think I can speak for everyone. I think it's time. It's beyond time, and as we move forward, exciting to know that maybe something new is around the corner, and maybe we'll be able to wrap our heads around this a little bit more.
Yeah, well, some things are right around the corner. So, like I said, in regard to the Atlas thing, maybe we'll all be in 3 days from now. Maybe the history of the world changes. I personally doubt it, but maybe it does. Who knows?
I got you. Tim, how do people get a hold of you, follow you, Alberino Analysis, get your books, all that stuff? Let them know, man.
Well, you can find my material. I mean, I've written a couple of books. One, The Birthright, which is available on Amazon. I've written an introduction commentary to the Book of Enoch, my own edition of the Book of Enoch, which I published with Nate Henry and Luke Rogers from the Blurry Creatures podcast. That's available. I believe we have a website called bookofenoch.com. I should know this, but I think it's bookofenoch.com or blurrybookofenoch.com. I can't remember. The safest bet is to go to Amazon and look for our Book of Enoch. You'll see that it has us as the authors. So if you're interested in those publications, I have another publication with those guys coming out shortly, before Christmas, hopefully. And I'm working on some other things in the background. If you want to see films I've made that are unpublished and conference material that most people haven't seen, or just interact with me directly, or interact with the people, other like-minded people, join my community, the Alberino Analysis members community. It's growing rapidly, and it's some of the most intelligent people that I encounter anywhere, and people with incredible experiences. We have in there. We have people from every walk of life in that community. We have congressional people in there. We have podcast personalities in there. We have researchers, historians, theologians, scholars. We have people who are interested in the Bigfoot topic, aliens, theological stuff, end times, whatever. It's all there. And it's really constructive conversations in an environment that's conducive to learning, not an environment that fosters hostility. That's social media. This is an environment, it's a no troll zone. And that doesn't mean that everybody thinks the same. No, everybody comes with a diverse array of opinions and respectfully debates those opinions or engages in a dialogue around those opinions. We do live streams. But we have a book club. We're currently going through Birthright, my book, and I'm updating some thoughts, and we're going systematic through Birthright. So anyway, that's where I'm hanging out most of the time, is at the alberinoanalysis.com. I've been neglecting my YouTube channel, which I'm going to try and remedy that here. But I have a YouTube channel, Timothy Alberino, and then of course you can find me on social media, X and Instagram. And I do have a TikTok account, which again I neglect, but I do have a TikTok account. My handle's always the same, at Timothy Alberino.
There's only one Timothy Alberino, baby.
And you said that like Elvis. I kind of like that. And I do have a website, timothyalberino.com. But hey, it was great catching up with you, Ryan, and congratulations on your podcast.
I appreciate it, man. Hey, and you just keep on keeping on. Your voice is an important one out there, and I appreciate all your research, everything that you do, man. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and I encourage everybody to track with you and your podcast, and if they can, to go see your show in Branson.
Yeah,
I intend to at some point. I'm telling you, I'm a big fan of Elvis, so I intend to come see your show at some point before you retire.
Yeah,
so you got to tell me when you're retiring, and I'll make sure I get to Branson to see your show.
Man, if you got a conference or something, man, come on down. I'll hook you up. All right.
Definitely.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, he's amazing. He's awesome. The one and only Timothy Alberino. Thank you very much. That's how you launch year 3, with a conversation that rips the veil straight off the world's biggest mystery. Massive thanks to Timothy Alberino for joining the Ryan Files and helping us see the alien and UFO disclosure movement in a whole new light. If this episode moved you, don't just watch, be a part of the mission. How, you might ask? Well, join the channel right here on YouTube for badges, early access to episodes, and members-only perks. Or become an agent of the Ryan Files at patreon.com/the Ryan Files for exclusive bonus content. And of course, be sure to drop by theryanfiles.com, the headquarters for everything wild, weird, and true. You'll find merch designed for truth seekers, every episode archived and ready to binge, and of course, our brand new Deep Dive Book Club, your resource for connecting with all the amazing guests you've seen right here on the Ryan Files. Year 3 is here, my friends. The curtain is lifting, and the truth is finally breaking through. You folks are awesome. Be amazing, be positive, and stay curious out there, my friends. And I'll see you next time right here on the Ryan Files.
Are you not curious?
Preparing to transfer the Ryan Files. Now.
I present to you, with great intrigue and wonder, the Ryan Files.